The invitation came on a Tuesday in March. Cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing, perhaps more expensive per piece than I spent on groceries in a week. Mr. and Mrs. Ryan Richardson graciously invite your attendance. I had to read it twice before realizing my son was getting married, and I was being notified, not consulted. No telephone call, no visit, just an invitation in the mail as if I were a distant relative. They felt compelled to include. I laid it on my kitchen counter next to the stack of past due notifications and gazed at it for a while. Ryan was now 28, successful in his IT career, and living in a downtown apartment that cost more in monthly rent than I earned in 6 months at the insurance company. He'd been with Barbara for 3 years, and I'd met her only twice. Both times we had brief, unpleasant interactions in which she glanced at my modest flat and bargain store clothes with the polite distaste that affluent people possess. The wedding was scheduled for June 15th, a Saturday at the country club where Barbara's family was a member, and I was confident that I would stand out like a grass stain on white linen. I called Ryan that evening. "Oh, hello, Mom." His voice always had a preoccupied air to it when he spoke to me, as if he was reading emails or scrolling through his phone. "You received the invitation?" "I did. Congratulations, honey. Barbara looks wonderful." A pause. "Yes, she is. Listen about the wedding. I'm really delighted for you both. When would be a good time to help with the planning? I know how pricey these items can be, so I've been saving." Mom, stop. His voice became sharper. "We don't need support. Barbara's parents are handling everything. Everything's taken care of." "I am not talking about money, Ryan. I'm talking about becoming involved. Mother and son dancing, flower selection, cake taste. We've already done all of that. So just show up on the day. Okay, wear something attractive but not overly conservative. Barbara's family is rather conventional. Something lovely, but not to me." I really understood. "Of course," I replied. My voice remained calm despite the familiar anguish creeping through my chest. I would not want to humiliate anyone. It is not about embarrassment. Never mind. I have to go. Barbara is fixing dinner. The call ended, and I sat in my silent apartment gazing at the invitation. "Black tie optional" was written on the corner in little text. I'd never owned anything that could pass as black tie. My only nice outfit was navy blue and 5 years old, purchased for Ryan's college graduation. For the following 3 months, I saved every money I could. I missed Mal's walk to work rather than riding the bus and canceled my television subscription. By May, I had saved enough to buy a dress that would not embarrass my son on his wedding day. Deep emerald green, simple but elegant, from a department store, which was a step up from my normal thrift store purchases. I even purchased new shoes and had my graying hair professionally done for the first time in years. I wanted to appear as if I belonged, that I was worthy of being Ryan's mother. The morning of the wedding, I stepped in front of my bathroom mirror and could scarcely recognize myself. The woman peering back appeared polished and stately. For a minute, I imagined Ryan's expression when he saw me. Perhaps a flash of pride, a moment when he presented me to his in-laws without the slight grimace I'd gotten accustomed to. The country club was located on finely maintained grounds that sloped toward a tiny lake. Luxury automobiles lined the circular driveway. BMW, Mercedes, and a few Teslas. My 15-year-old Honda Civic, newly washed but yet clearly old, looked like it had wandered into the wrong zip code. The lobby glittered with marble and crystal. Guests gathered in groups, their laughter bouncing off the lofty ceilings. The women donned beautiful clothes and jewelry that reflected the light with each movement. The men exuded the comfortable assurance that comes with not needing to check your money balance before making a purchase. Ryan stood near the main staircase, dazzling in his black tuxedo, his dark hair neatly groomed. He was giggling as Barbara's father spoke, his head thrown back in real delight. Barbara stood behind him, gorgeous and lovely, wearing a bridal gown that most likely cost more than my annual income. They appeared to belong in a magazine spread. I made my way over my new shoes, clicking on the marble floor. As I neared, Ryan's gaze met mine, and for a brief second his smile wavered, not with recognition or warmth, but with something profoundly resigned. "Mom," he murmured, his tone perfectly neutral. "You made it. You look so gorgeous." I remarked, reaching up to adjust his bow tie, a move I'd made 1,000 times when he was younger. But now he took a little step back, breaking the contact. Thanks, you look good. The delay before good was just long enough to sting. Barbara's father, a dignified guy with silver hair and a golf tan, offered his hand. You must be Ryan's mom, Tom Whitmore. Catherine Morris, I said, shaking his hand. Congratulations on having such a fantastic son-in-law. Indeed. His grin was courteous and distant. Ryan informs us that you work in insurance. I do. The majority of my work is data input. I'd learned not to oversell my lowly position, and now I'm just the pleased mother of the groom. Tom nodded and returned his focus to Ryan, telling him about the golf course at his holiday house in Hilton Head. I waited there for another while, invisible again, before softly leaving. The ceremony was amazing. Ryan's eyes never left Barbara. As she came down the aisle and as they exchanged vows, there was a love in his voice that reminded me of when he was younger and would tell me about his day at school. However, such times felt as if they belonged to someone else's son and life. I was in the third row behind Barbara's extended family and Ryan's college buddies. Nobody reserved me a seat in the first row. Nobody appeared to realize I was there at all. After the ceremony, while people made their way to the reception hall, I stayed in the church smoothing my dress and preparing for what was to come. The reception would be worse. More opportunity to feel out of place. More possibilities for minor humiliation. But I was Ryan's mom. Today was his wedding day. I would bear whatever happened next because that is what moms do. I had no clue that in a few hours I would realize that even a mother's love has its limitations. The reception hall exuded subtle elegance with white linens, crystal stemware, and centerpieces that appeared to have been designed by florists who cost more per hour than I did in a day. Round tables for 8 littered the space, each one a carefully orchestrated social or order. My name card was at table 7, nestled in the rear corner near the kitchen doors. The remaining seats were taken by what appeared to be Barbara's distant relatives, an old aunt with a hearing aid, a couple who appeared uncomfortable in their formal attire, and numerous vacant chairs, implying that even the C-list guests had not bothered to show up. The Whitmore and their closest family friends sat at table 1, directly in front of Ryan and Barbara's seat. Ryan's college pals and their spouses sat at table number 2. Table 3 has Barbara's sorority sisters. I saw the meticulous dance of riches and connection determining exactly where I stood in my son's new world. Excuse me, are you Ryan's mother? The voice belonged to a woman in her 50s with soft eyes and an apology grin. I'm Margaret, Barbara's great aunt. I hope to sit with someone who knew the groom. Catherine, I answered, happy for a pleasant face. Please join me. Margaret approached as we settled in. Between you and me, I feel little out of place here. She nodded to the grandeur all around us. It's lovely, but not my cup of tea. It's Ryan's special day, I said naturally. That is what matters. The cocktail hour went on, and I watched my son work the room like a politician. He strolled from table to table, shaking hands, sharing laughter, and portraying the ideal groom. But as the minutes passed, something caused my chest to tighten. He went to every table except mine. I reminded myself that he was saving the best for last. I told myself he was busy. I told myself anything to avoid the rising hollow sensation in my gut from enlarging. When supper arrived, the waitstaff worked slowly, presenting dishes to the top table first, and then working their way down the hierarchy. Tables 1 through 6 were served beautifully presented fish with asparagus and baked potatoes, which were still steaming. By the time they arrived at our table, the kitchen was visibly behind schedule. Margaret received her plate, which was lukewarm but attractive. The old aunt got hers next, followed by the uncomfortable couple, who then hurried out. I'm very sorry, the server murmured, clearly ashamed. There was a misunderstanding in the kitchen. Your meals will be ready in just a few minutes. 20 minutes passed, then 30. The other guests had finished their meals and were now moving on to toasts and speeches. I sat with an empty place, setting my stomach discreetly grumbling as I watched my son giggle at his new father-in-law's jokes. Finally, a different server came with a dish. The fish was chili, the asparagus limp, and the potatoes were thick with cooling fat. It looked like something you'd find beneath a heat lamp at a cheap buffet. Margaret muttered compassionately, referring to kitchen leftovers. "This is unacceptable," but I grinned as I picked up my fork. "It's okay," I said. "I'm just glad to be here." The fact was that I was used to leftovers being last and making do with whatever remained after everyone else had finished theirs. This was merely another take on a familiar topic. I was about halfway through my cold salmon when I heard it. Ryan's voice carried across the room as he stood to deliver his thank you speech. But before addressing the gathering, he was conversing with Barbara, his voice barely loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear. "Did you see that they finally brought my mother's food?" He motioned toward my table with a wicked grin in the low lights. "She is accustomed to consuming what life leaves behind, so she will not mind." Barbara laughed, making a tinkling sound like broken glass. Several individuals from the head joined in, following her lead. The sound spread as Ryan's college mates caught up on the joke, their spouses hiding their lips to hide their laughter. I gently placed down my fork, my hands firm despite the earthquake inside my chest. Margaret seemed shocked. "Did he just—" "It's all right," I said, but the words felt like ash in my lips. Ryan finished his statement by thanking the Whites for accepting him into their family, his friends for their encouragement, and Barbara for making him the luckiest man alive. He praised the caterers, musicians, and flowers. He never mentioned me. When he finished, there was loud applause. Glasses clinked. People wiped away tears. And Ryan bent to kiss his bride as if he had just delivered the most emotional speech ever. I sat in my corner, surrounded by cold food and the echoing recollection of my sons laughing at my expense, when something inside me snapped neatly in half. Not shattering, that would have been messier, more dramatic. This was precise, surgical, the ultimate breakup of whatever relationship I'd been frantically attempting to retain. The dancing started after dinner. Ryan and Barbara floated across the floor for their first dance, looking like characters from a fairy tale. Then came the parental dances. Tom Whitmore spins Barbara with practiced ease, while Barbara's mother sways sentimentally behind Ryan. I waited for Ryan to locate me so we could dance. I had anticipated this moment for months, and I had even rehearsed a few steps in my living room while listening to old music on my phone. However, as the evening progressed and more family members joined in the dance, it became evident that no invitation would be sent. Ryan was too busy, too important, and too preoccupied with his new life to remember the mother who had raised him alone when his father abandoned him when he was 7. The lady who had worked double shifts to pay for his baseball equipment, who had helped him with his homework at the kitchen table every night, who had transported him to college in her broken-down car, and who sobbed in the parking lot after saying goodbye. Margaret softly stroked my arm. "Are you okay, dear?" I glanced around the room at the joy and celebration at my son spinning on the dance floor with his beautiful wife, and at the world he had created for himself, which had no place for me. For the first time all evening, I had perfect clarity about what was going on. "I am flawless," I said, and I meant it. I stood up and smoothed my emerald dress one final time. I strolled to the coat check, grabbed my bag, and headed for the exit. Ryan, Barbara, and the other guests who had spent the evening pretending I didn't exist paid no attention to my departure. But as I approached the foyer, I could hear footsteps behind me. Mrs. Morris Margaret was somewhat out of breath. "Are you leaving?" I am. Without saying goodbye, I turned to gaze back through the doorway where the reception was still in full flow. Ryan was now in the pub with his mates, his tie loosened and his cheeks flushed from wine and delight. He appeared youthful and carefree, unburdened by thoughts of his mother. "He won't notice," I stated simply. Margaret's face crumpled in compassion. "I'm so sorry. It wasn't proper how he spoke about you." "No, I agree it was not. But when I went to my car in the warm glow of the country club's landscape lighting, I wasn't thinking about apologies or pity. I was thinking about the email I would send once I got home. The one that will come in Ryan's email tomorrow morning while he was still suffering from his wedding day hangover. The one that would alter everything. I drove home in quiet. No radio, no thoughts, just the steady rhythm of my heartbeat and the white lines fading beneath my headlights. The lady who had entered the country club 6 hours earlier, eager, frightened, and yet believing in the chance of reconciliation, had vanished. In her place sat someone I was only getting to know. My apartment felt different when I stepped in, smaller but also cleaner, free of illusions. I placed my green dress in the closet next to my work clothes before changing into jeans and a t-shirt. Then I sat down at my kitchen table with my laptop and proceeded to write the most crucial email of my life. I did not compose it in anger. Anger would have been messy, emotive, and easily dismissed. Instead, I wrote it with the precision of someone who had finally given up pretending that love could exist without regard. Ryan, I'm writing while your wedding day is still fresh in my mind, but I imagine the elements that are important to me are different from those you'll recall. I appreciate the clarity you brought tonight. Your remark about my being accustomed to devouring what life leaves behind was insightful. It was brutal, yes, but it was also honest. For the first time in years, you told me precisely how you feel about me. You're correct. I have spent the most of my adult life taking leftovers. After you've spent your best hours with friends and girlfriends, you have some free time. After everyone else's needs had been met, there was still time for me. After everyone else's wants had been addressed, there was still some room for contemplation. I accepted this because I thought that was what love looked like. That being your mother included being thankful for any tokens of affection you decided to throw my way. But today, as I watched you chuckle while eating my cold meal, I understood something crucial. I trained you to regard me as leftovers. Every time I accepted anything less than fundamental human decency, I demonstrated to you that I thought I deserved less. I won't make that mistake again. I am removing all financial assistance that I have already provided effective immediately. This includes the $500 monthly installments I've been placing into your savings account since you graduated college. You assume they came from your trust fund, but there is no trust fund. It was me working extra hours and foregoing meals so you could create your nest egg. I will also discontinue the life insurance policy that lists you as a beneficiary. The coverage I've had for 12 years with premiums that sometimes force me to pick between groceries and petrol. I'm canceling the credit card I created for your emergencies. The one you've used 17 times in the last 2 years for anything from auto repairs to vacation deposits. Always promising to repay me, but never following through. Most significantly, I'm selling my house. Yes, Ryan, I own the home in which you grew up. The house you imagine will one day be yours. I never told you this because I wanted you to achieve on your own terms, not because you were expecting an inheritance. The home is currently worth around $340. I intend to sell it within the next 6 months. I'll use that money to travel to live and to finally do some of the things I put off while I was busy being invisible in your life. You once asked me why I didn't remarry after your father departed. The fact is, I was so focused on being your mother that I neglected to be anything else. I threw everything I had into raising you, hoping that one day you'd see all of my sacrifices as acts of love rather than weakness. I was mistaken about a lot of things, but this one stood out. I assumed that if I loved you enough, you would ultimately love me back. Not as the woman who cleaned up your messes and paid your blunders, but as someone deserving of fundamental respect. Tonight you made it apparent that this would never happen. I'm not furious, Ryan. Anger suggests that I anticipated more. Instead, I am thankful. You've saved me from the hard task of attempting to earn affection from someone who is incapable of offering it. Do not interpret this as a threat or an effort at manipulation. I'm not searching for an apology or attempting to punish you into better conduct. I'm only advising you that Mom's bank has closed forever. I hope your marriage makes you happy. I hope Barbara provides you with all you require. And I hope that one day, when you have your own children, you will realize the distinction between loving and respecting someone. You will always be my son, but I will not be your safety net, Catherine. I reread the email 3 times before sending it. Each syllable was measured intentional and sincere. There was no pleading, no opportunity for compromise, and no secret message urging him to prove me wrong. At 3:47 a.m., I hit the send button. Then I poured myself a glass of wine, the costly bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion that never came, and set about designing my new life. By Sunday afternoon, I'd phoned a realtor. By Monday, I'd found a financial advisor. By Tuesday, I had begun looking for extended stay apartments in cities I had never visited. By Wednesday, I'd booked vacation days for the first time in 3 years. Ryan responded on Thursday morning just as I had expected. Mom, what the heck is this email? Are you experiencing a breakdown? I believe you misread what happened at the wedding. It was only a joke. Everyone was laughing, and not just at you. You're being very sensitive about this. Can we speak like adults? I understand you are furious, but selling the house is foolish. You're talking about my inheritance. Dad would be mortified if he knew you were threatening to give up my future in this manner. Barbara believes you may be experiencing a midlife crisis. She knows a therapist who specializes in helping ladies your age who are dealing with empty nest syndrome. If you like, I may arrange up an appointment. Let's just calm down and speak things out. I'll come over on Sunday and we can sort things out. Ryan, I erased the email without replying. Saturday brought an additional message. This one is shorter but more challenging. Mom, I've been trying to reach you for 2 days. Pick up the phone. We need to talk about this house problem before you do anything dumb. I spoke with a lawyer and you cannot just cut me out of my inheritance-like way. Call me back. I changed my phone number on Friday. Sunday's email had a different tone. Catherine. I apologize for what I said during the wedding. I was inebriated and couldn't think well. You know I love you, and I did not want to harm your feelings, but this is getting out of hand. Barbara's parents are questioning why my mother is behaving insane, which is humiliating for both of us. Look, I will repay you for whatever money you believe I owe you. We can arrange a payment plan, but you can't sell your house. If you absolutely need the money right now, I know acquaintances who would be willing to buy it from you for a reasonable amount. Let's simply meet and discuss things face to face. I'll take you out to a lovely meal and we'll work everything out. I emailed this email to my realtor and included a remark. Please speed the listing procedure. The residence went on the market Tuesday morning. It had 3 showings on Thursday and 2 offers by the weekend. I accepted the greater offer of $1,500 over the asking price in cash with a 30-day closure. Ryan's final email arrived on Sunday. You won. I'm not sure what game you're playing, but congratulations. You've destroyed our relationship and humiliated me in front of my new family. I hope the argument you're making is worth losing your kid for. Do not contact me again. I'm done attempting to repair whatever is broken in you. I printed this email and placed it in a folder titled Evidence Not for Legal Purposes, but to remind my son of who he truly was when he believed I would cease paying his lifestyle. The closing date for the house was July 20th. I'd already put down deposits on a furnished apartment in Savannah and planned a month-long vacation in a Vermont bed and breakfast for the fall. For the first time in 30 years, I was making plans that had nothing to do with Ryan's requirements, timeline, or permission. The mother who reared him was no longer alive. In her place was someone who was finally ready to live alone. The home sold on a Tuesday. I signed the documents in a conference room that smelled of leather and expensive perfume, surrounded by strangers who handled this transaction as if it were any other business deal, which it probably was. The check was large enough to raise the banker's eyebrows somewhat as she processed the deposit. $3,500 zero after fees and commissions, more money than I had ever held at one moment, more money than Ryan had ever believed I had. I drove past the house one last time after it closed. The new owners had already settled in. A young couple with a kid was riding a plastic tricycle in the driveway where Ryan used to practice basketball shots. They appeared cheerful, ignorant to the decades of sacrifice and heartbreak that had occurred behind those walls. I felt nothing when gazing at it. Nostalgia, no regrets. It was only a structure that now housed someone else's ambitions. My phone, the new number Ryan didn't have, had been silent for 3 weeks. But that evening, while I was collecting my final few possessions for the trip to Savannah, someone knocked on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole and saw Barbara standing in the hallway, her fancy clothing and delicate makeup looking nicely put together. She was alone. I opened the door but did not welcome her inside. Catherine. Her voice was carefully managed, a tone she most likely employed with tough customers at whatever public relations business she worked for. May I come inside? I think we should discuss. I do not think we do. Please, this impacts all of us. She motioned vaguely at the space between us. The entire matter has gone out of hand. I stood aside and let her to enter, rather out of curiosity than civility. She treated my half-packed boxes and naked walls with the same politeness she had used to evaluate my bridal attire. Coffee I offered, but I hoped she would reject. That would be nice. I prepared 2 cups of the instant coffee I had left and served them in mismatched mugs. Barbara received hers with a smile that did not extend to her eyes. I want you to know that I had no clue Ryan was so financially dependent on you. She drank her coffee cautiously. He never mentioned the monthly installments or the credit card agreement. I am sure he didn't. When I married him, I thought that his savings account reflected his own financial discipline. If I'd known she drifted off, allowing me to fill in the blanks with what a responsible lady like her would have done, would it have mattered? Barbara's composure shifted slightly. Of course it would have mattered. I do not believe in adults relying on their parents permanently. But now that we know about these arrangements, we can figure something out. Ryan's income is pretty decent, and with my wage, we can surely afford a decent payback plan. There is nothing to repay. I was giving my son gifts. Gifts that I can no longer provide. Catherine? Barbara leaned closer, her voice becoming more intense. I need you to comprehend something. Ryan's reputation inside his workplace is deteriorating. When he couldn't make his auto payment last month due to a misunderstanding, he had to borrow money from his boss. That is not something that will look well when it comes time for promotion. I waited for her to proceed. My face is neutral. The credit card issue has been very troublesome. He has multiple automated payments set up. He has a gym membership. He offers professional development classes. Even our honeymoon was largely paid on that card. When those payments started bouncing, it caused problems. I can imagine. We had to relocate out of our loft. The rent was... She motioned hopelessly. We're staying with my parents till we figure out where we'll live. This was new knowledge. Ryan and Barbara, the golden couple, living in his in-laws' guest room because Mom's bank had closed permanently. I'm sad to hear that. Or you and Barbara's mask finally came off for the first time because, frankly, Catherine, I don't believe you are. I believe you are enjoying this. I pondered her remarks carefully. Was I enjoying it? Ryan's financial struggles? His reputation has taken a hit. His wounded pride. I am not enjoying his struggles. I finally said it. But I am not accountable for them either. Ryan is 38 years old. If he can't manage his finances without his mother's covert subsidies, he caused the situation. He's 28, Barbara corrected sharply. No, Barbara. He is 28 and has lived for years, but he's never had to be a grown-up since I always solved his issues before he ever realized he had them. I did him no favors by making his life so comfortable that he forgot how to stand alone. Barbara clinked her coffee cup. So is this some kind of less in tough love? This is me stepping aside and allowing him to face the natural consequences of his decisions. So what about the house? That is not a natural outcome. That is vindictive. I looked at this nicely groomed woman who had married my son out of love, but stayed with him because she felt he provided financial stability she didn't have to secure for herself. The house was mine to sell. I deserved it. I paid for it. I kept it. Ryan assumed it would eventually be his, but assumptions are not legally binding. But definitely. Barbara? I stood up, indicating that the talk was done. Ryan stated his views clearly during your wedding. I'm accustomed to devouring what life leaves behind. Well, I've decided I'm no longer hungry for leftovers. She gazed at me for a long time, and I could feel her readjusting, hoping to find an angle that would succeed where direct appeal had failed. What if Ryan apologized? Did they really apologize? Would it make a difference? No. What if we invited you for dinner? Have you made sure you feel included in our life? Moving forward, no. So, what do you want? The inquiry came out nearly as a cry, and her serenity finally cracked entirely. What does it take for you to quit punishing him? I am not punishing him, Barbara. I'm just not saving him anymore. There is a distinction. She collected her handbag and stood her motions tense from irritation. Do you know what I think? I believe you are resentful because your life did not go as planned, and you are now venting your frustration on Ryan since he is successful and happy. I accompanied her to the door unaffected by her analysis. Ryan's success was founded upon a foundation I laid without his knowing. His happiness was made possible by my poverty. Now we'll see what he can create on his own. After she went, I could finish packing in quiet. The next morning, I packed my car with everything I possessed that was important. I packed 2 bags, a crate of books, and my laptop and went south to a life I never believed imaginable. In Savannah, I leased a tiny apartment about 4 blocks from the river. The rent was cheap, the area was walkable, and for the first time in decades, I could afford it without foregoing other needs. I obtained a part-time work at a nearby bookshop. Nothing flashy, but enough to augment my money while I worked out what was next. The owner, a lady called Rita, who was approximately my age, gave me the job the same day I applied. "You appear to be someone who understands that books are more than just inventory," she stated after our quick chat. For 3 months, I lived quietly, anonymously, and contentedly. I read literature I'd never had time for, went on long walks down the river, and learned how to make meals for one without feeling sorry for myself. I heard nothing from Ryan, which was exactly what I expected. But then one Thursday afternoon in October, Rita gave me a phone message. "Someone phoned asking for you and said he was your son." He sounded. She stopped looking for the proper term. Desperate, I gazed at the phone message. For quite some time, Ryan had followed me down, discovered the bookstore, and persuaded Rita to leave a note. The fact that he had gone to such lengths revealed everything about his present state of desperation. Did he express what he wanted? I asked Rita. "Just that it was urgent and he wanted to talk with you. He left a number." She looked at my face attentively. "You don't seem pleased to hear from him." "I am not." "Family is difficult," she observed, with the insight of someone who has lived long enough to realize that blood does not always establish relationships worth keeping. I folded the message and placed it in my pocket. 3 hours later, when I was storing returns in the poetry department, I discarded it. However, Ryan was not the sort to give up lightly when he needed something. 2 days later, he showed up to the bookstore in person. When I looked up from helping a customer find a biography, I noticed him standing near the front door, surveying the store. He looked dreadful, much thinner than I recalled. His clothing crumpled, and his normally confident posture was replaced by one that resembled terror. I finished with my customer and strolled up to him, keeping my demeanor neutral. "Ryan, Mom." His voice broke slightly at the word. "Thank God. I've been trying to find you for weeks. I overheard." "What do you want?" He looked around the business, noting my name badge, decent shoes, and the life I'd made without him. "Can we discuss in private?" "We can chat here, please. This is vital. There is a coffee shop next door. I am working. Then after work, I will wait." I stared at this man, who used to be my little kid, crawling into my bed during thunderstorms and telling me I was the finest mother in the world. That child had vanished, replaced by someone who only recalled my existence when he needed it. "I get off at 6:00. The coffee shop shuts at 7:00. You have an hour." Relief filled his face. "Thank you. I will be waiting at 6:01. I spotted him at a corner table with 2 glasses already ordered. He ordered me a latte with extra froth, just like I used to drink in high school, and we'd occasionally go to the mall together. The gesture was intended to remind me of happier times. I sat down without touching my coffee. "You look nice," he said, rested. "What do you want, Ryan?" He took a deep breath and composed himself. When he talked, his voice had the prepared air of someone who had repeated the discussion several times. "I'd want to apologize for everything. The wedding, the way I spoke to you, and how I took you for granted throughout the years. I was mistaken, and I apologize. I waited for more. I know I harmed you, and I understand that saying sorry does not make everything right. But I'm hoping we can start fresh and have a better connection moving forward. Are you in? Yes, I've learned a lot about myself in the last several months. About what truly matters, and what really matters is family. The timing of this disclosure is interesting." His tightly controlled expression twitched. "What do you mean? I mean it's interesting that you realize the value of family right about the moment your financial circumstances became terrible. That's not right. This is not about money." I sat back in my chair and studied him. "Is not it Barbara paid me a visit a few months back? She was pretty knowledgeable about your current situation." Ryan's face reened. "Barbara had absolutely no right to engage you in our troubles. So you accept that you have difficulties. Everyone has issues, Mother. That's not right." Look, I get what you are thinking, but it's not about the money. Yes, you cut us off and things have been tight since. We are nonetheless managing. I received a promotion at work. Barbara is taking on additional clients. We are okay. So why are you here? The question lingered in the air between us. Ryan looked into his coffee cup, his composure beginning to deteriorate. He said quietly, "Because I understand what I have lost." "What have you lost?" "Ryan, my mother, my family, the one who believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself." "You are referring to the one who has always saved you. That is unfair, isn't it?" "Because I have been thinking about our relationship for the past few months, and I discovered something intriguing. You never phoned me simply to speak. You never came until you needed something. You never involved me in your life until it helped you in some way. So when you say you miss me, what precisely are you missing?" Ryan's hands shook slightly as he grabbed for his coffee. "I miss having a mother who loved me. I loved you. I loved you so deeply that I forgot to expect you to love me back. I adore you. No, Ryan, you appreciate what I provided. A safety net, financial assistance, and unconditional acceptance of your decisions, regardless of how they affected me. You cherished having a mother who asked for nothing and gave everything. That is not true." I unlocked my handbag and pulled out my phone, browsing through the photo album. "Do you know what I've been doing for the last 4 months?" He shakes his head. "I traveled to Charleston and attended a culinary lesson. I learned how to cook paella from scratch. I visited Asheville and tacked some of the Blue Ridge Parkway. I spent 2 weeks in Vermont watching the leaves turn colors. I've read 37 books, learned to play chess, and began taking Spanish classes online. I showed him images of myself laughing with my culinary class, standing on mountain overlooks, and reading in a hammock stretched between 2 oak trees. I have been living, Ryan. For the first time in 30 years, I'm living for myself rather than waiting for you to need me. You could still accomplish those things. We could even perform a few of them jointly. Can we? When was the last time you exhibited an interest in doing anything with me that was not related to a favor? You needed silence. I will wait. I said more silence. The reality is, Ryan, you never viewed me as an individual. I was a function, the mother function. And when that function got cumbersome or humiliating, you cracked jokes about it during your wedding reception. I had been drinking. I did not mean you intended every word. Drunk folks do not lie, Ryan. They just cease filtering their thoughts before expressing them. He was weeping now, tears streaming down his cheeks as the full weight of his loss dawned on him. But I didn't feel anything, no desire to console him. There's no maternal impulse to make things better. "What can I do?" he whispered. "Please tell me what I can do to remedy this." "Nothing. There must be something, some ways to win your forgiveness, Ryan. I am not furious enough to need to forgive you. Forgiveness means that I am hanging on to the pain, waiting for you to heal it. But I'm not hurt anymore. I am free. I do not comprehend. I understand you don't. That is exactly the problem." I rose up and left my untouched coffee on the table. Ryan gazed up at me with the face of someone seeing his entire life crumble. "Wait, please, do not leave like this. I am not leaving, Ryan. I departed some months ago. You've only just noticed." I proceeded toward the door before turning around one final time. "For what it's worth, I hope you find happiness in the life you've chosen, but you'll have to learn it without me." Outside, the Savannah evening was gentle and pleasant. I strolled slowly back to my flat, past Spanish, moss, covered squares, and the sound of jazz coming from restaurant patios. Ryan was most likely still seated at that tea table, attempting to digest the knowledge that his safety net would never return. Tomorrow, I would begin planning my next excursion. Perhaps Italy, perhaps Colorado, maybe somewhere. I never imagined going since I was too busy being someone's mother to be myself. The woman who had accepted leftovers for 30 years had passed away. In her place was someone who had finally realized she deserved a seat at the table, preferably her